Hello and welcome to the Daily Atheist. I hope you had a good weekend. It is Monday the 13th. Monday, right? I think I'm I'd be more afraid of a Monday the 13th as opposed to Friday the 13th, because at least Friday the 13th has something going for it, right? But so good morning, everybody. I have got. I hope you had a good weekend. I've got a special guest, Chris Stum, this morning. I hope I said that right, Chris. How are you doing today?
I think I'm all right.
Yeah, you think? Yeah, I heard it. I had one of my friends in the chat Old Man Dan, I believe, was talking about being near some tornadoes minutes ago. You're in kind of that situation as well, right?
I believe so.
Exciting adventures going on over there.
As was once said, I think I do like to live dangerously.
Well, if you lose your internet, we will worry, but we'll understand that there's weather going on around your area. So if we lose you, so I just want to take a moment to say hello to everybody in the chat. We've got Brainbug and Uribench. Uribench is from Israel. Good to have you this morning, Uribench. John Anthony, Epileptic Skeptic, is here this morning. Let me see who else we've got. Brainbug. Hi, Brainbug. Joan. And, of course, Old Man Dan. We were talking about Old Man Dan. I hope everything's going on okay over there. Paul Cammish is here. And Woolly Ignorant. There's others, but it kind of... I appreciate you all. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Hi, Chris.
Hi there.
You had an interesting weekend, or at least the last few hours have been interesting due to the weather. If you don't mind, though, would you give us a quick introduction? Tell us who you are.
Yeah, I think my name is Christopher Robert Stum. I'm an undergraduate student at UNC Chapel Hill, majoring in pure mathematics. I specialize in mathematical proofing. I do a little bit of theoretical physics and formal logic.
Gotcha.
As far as like who I am as a person, I don't know.
You're working on that, huh? So you said when you opened that, you said you think you are.
Yeah.
You're not sure?
That's right. I'm not.
Okay.
Even that I'm not sure. Yeah.
I understand. Now, is that keyed off of something I said, or is that how you actually introduce yourself?
Because I don't know. I don't think that I pretend to be solely the author of my own thoughts, but implicit in that like supposition isn't necessarily an implicature towards like an assumed determinism. Gotcha. I'm not sure, even that I'm not sure. So in other words, there may be a logical problem with the claim if and when if I'm unsure of everything and I assert that I am, right? There's potential for trouble if and when it's necessary to know something about myself to make that claim, right? So perhaps it's the case that if I was truly unsure of everything, which I don't know if I am, but if I was, maybe I couldn't even assert that I was.
That would make it difficult, wouldn't it? So, so I'm not drinking coffee. I think I'm drinking coffee. Is that right?
Or even, if you don't know X, but perhaps you know Y, right? Then there may not be conflict. But I don't know if we can know anything, fundamentally. I don't know.
That's kind of an interesting philosophy. How did you come upon that?
Well, most of the insight is really rooted in deep mathematical proofing. If you go deep enough, you'll find some of it's rooted in Gödel's incompleteness theorems, the first and second. It's basically, it's not obvious that the very discreteness of systems of logic impede us from proving things about logic itself. And, you can basically show that for any discrete system, there exists at least one, what's called a boundary proposition that's neither provable nor disprovable by the system, So I think in one show, I was explaining to people that, in the case of Euclid's fifth postulate, mathematicians a while ago were able to show that from the assumed axioms of Euclidean geometry, that postulate is neither provable nor disprovable with those postulates. So if you accept it, you get Euclidean geometry, and if you reject it, you get non-Euclidean. But that's why but ironically, my attempt at a dissertation will kind of be to try to remedy that through a continuous system of logic, but you can't use discrete symbols.
Gotcha. Man, This is going to be some awesome morning show fodder. Interesting. So can you tell me, so you're big into mathematics and you're clearly an intelligent person. What got you into the mathematics? Something as a kid where you one of those little child prodigies that made the rest of us sit there and go, you stupid.
Actually, that's what's weird is, I've never really, as far as I'm aware, valued awards or accolades. And as far as my education is concerned, I didn't really have much of a substantive formal one. Much of what I understand is self-taught.
Gotcha.
And I began my journey into mathematics later, perhaps than most people prolific at it. But my skills, mathematics is a difficult subject because it's cumulative, right? And what we mean by that is that it's necessary to remember the systems of equations very often that govern, a dynamical system, but it's not sufficient to be proficient at mathematics to know those equations. By know them, I don't mean knowledge as much as to, if such a thing is possible, have the capacity to remember them. So I'm not really sure. I don't think I know. Why.
Well, I mean, all right, let me perhaps rephrase the question. When was when I began like serious mathematics, not just algebra, right? Like something of like substantive beyond calculus, maybe. That was about, I'd say, 17 years, 6 months, and 2 days ago. Good to know. All right, so were you a little kid, I'm guessing? I mean, you look fairly young.
I look young, right? How old do you think I am?
I would put you, 25, between 25 and 30.
I'm 28. I mean, you're in the ballpark. Yeah, you're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
But I look younger than I am for some reason.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, so you're big into mathematics, clearly.
I don't know.
I don't know such. I did a little self-study and I did really good at math. I got frustrated at doing the mathematic whenever I could no longer do it in my head. Whenever I got to the point where I couldn't do, it was into the algebra part where it was getting into complex algebra, and that frustrated me. Never got past that. I've heard some of the other ones are easier, but of course that was self-study. Who sits around teaching themselves mathematics? I mean,
I'd say for a lot of my colleagues, speaking only for like the subset of the population I've observed, there's kind of I'd say the real brick wall for like mathematically gifted people, if that makes sense, comes up in formal proofing. That's when most people, even if you can do the math, like compute something, proofing requires a kind of fluidity and thinking that's very rare. So most people who are even talented at mathematics, they hit the wall at formal proofing.
Gotcha.
I'd say that's usually where you can filter the people who are going to be physicists and engineers from the people, which isn't to say that the sets are mutually exclusive, of course, but from the people that could be pure mathematicians. It's just unfortunately, and by the way, I'm saying these things are existentially quantified. So we're not saying for all X, we're saying, for some sufficiently large sample of the population, this seems to be true.
Right. I'm sure. The people are in the chat are going off about how old I am now. Now they're trying to guess my age. I've actually said my age a couple of times on the thing. I am younger than I look. I think it's the white stuff all over me. So,
are you? I mean, I have no clue. I'd have to look. I'd have to research. There's probably I don't know, looking at just musculoskeletal composition. I imagine some people, especially people who study bones, could actually guess your age.
Probably so.
But I have no inkling. I mean, by that I don't mean I literally have no ballpark. I mean, well, maybe I don't. I mean,
you might not. No, I'm I think 48.
I mean, I hope you haven't incurred some kind of space-time dilation, such that for all I know, from my reference frame or sets of reference frames, you're actually, you've perhaps if you have a velocity whose magnitude approximates the speed of light in a fixed reference frame, you can travel into my future. So
there you go. That would be unfortunate. I don't think that's the case, but I've recently discovered that I could be wrong. Yeah. So 48. I'm 48. The simple
48.
Answer. 48. Yeah, just turned 48. Yeah. I got all the gray. I started going gray young. Actually, I worked in a senior community there for a while, and they thought I was a resident. I was the IT guy. They thought I was a resident. Good morning, Godless Granny. Duncan is here. Hey, Duncan, your friend Duncan is here. Our
Duncan,
friend.
oh, gotcha. it's so strange that he's got so many, like he's got multiple aliases, and I've always found that, not literally always, because before the time I met him that wouldn't be applicable, but
Of course.
I think for the time, for the interval of time DT that I've known Duncan, for some subset of that, I think I've been suspicious of the presence of multiple aliases.
Ah, yes. Yeah, we got to watch him. He's shifty. Epileptic skeptic, I'm not sure what your mom's age is. I'm going to just take that as a compliment. I'm just going to walk away from that as a compliment. They're picking on me because I'm short, Chris.
You know what I would be interested in? I would be interested if we could get a hold of Darth Dawkins, and I could actually try to have a conversation with him, but I'm not sure if his intention was like, because when I said I don't know, and I tried to then explain like some of the mathematics, at least the intuition behind it, as to why, I think he left the chat, so I'm not even sure if he listened.
Right.
But so I don't know if he was really interested in a dialogue or not, okay. But I think I might be interested in actually, having a discussion with him, because it seems like, I assume he thinks his positions are tenable.
I think you're probably right. I'm going to write you down. There's going to be a couple of debates on my channel coming up as I can work them out. Let me just write this down so I don't forget. Now, with Darth Dawkins, I've heard a lot about him. I've kind of glancing blowed. I've been in a chat with him once, twice, maybe 3 times. As a matter of fact, the other day when we were in the chat together and he was talking about you, I actually thought he was talking about me because he came to here and he was in my channel with me one morning. And Neil, the 604 Atheist, I don't know if you know Neil. Neil is cool. He'd probably love to have your deconversion story if you have one on his show. Neil was at work just listening.
I don't think I was ever Christian, just to be clear.
So, okay, good. Well, yeah, he'll still have you though. Anyway, Neil was at work just listening to my show. He wasn't even talking or engaging in the chat. And Darth Dawkins showed up in the chat and started attacking Neil. Hey, Neil, how come you don't answer this question? Hey, Neil, how come you? I'm like, what are you doing in my chat? And one of my moderators kicked him, and he came in another time as another name, and he did the same thing, and somebody kicked him. So that's been my experience with him. I don't know nothing about the guy.
Well, to me, what was suspicious is I felt like I was asking him, "What do you mean?" Meaning I was trying to seek clarification, and maybe I didn't do a good job. I can see that, but many of the times that I thought there was a substantive question asked, we neither paused to unpack it, nor did he ask me, "What do you mean?"
Yeah,
and he didn't seem interested in what I was saying. But
I've heard that's a recurring theme with him. Pardon me.
I'm not sure. It's difficult to see the inside of a house through a keyhole. And I would like to just be able to be charitable. I don't claim to be on my vessel of truth. I don't know. But because I think what he was trying to get me to do is affirm or not affirm that God was a necessary precondition for all facts. And I think what he was thinking, it's a common misuse of the negation operator, is if I negate that I will assert, then I must not assert, which is what he was trying to pigeonhole me into, right? But such a problem is really, there are many problems. The first of which is, as I think I pointed out, you can define n-ary truth value systems, so it's not just a binary truth value system. So like in quantum computation, we use a ternary truth value system with an I for indeterminacy, but furthermore, even in a classical structure of logic, suppose that I tell you are not wet, right? Does it necessarily follow that you're dry? Well, no, because what if your body suddenly doesn't exist, right? And so it's not even applicable. You see, so included in the set of negation is not just the thing in opposition dimensionally to what you're referencing. So it actually doesn't even follow in a classical system that if I do not assert a particular propositional truth claim, that I must therefore take as an assertion the direct negation of that. It's very subtle, but there's a hidden additional criterion that we've kind of imposed on the system. And so that's why some logicians, they're not okay with the double negation.
Right. I think I would love to watch you, and I would even host it. I would host it. I would love to host you and Darth Dawkins. that would be wonderful. Randolph Richardson, though, he's the president of Canadian Atheists. I don't know if you know that or not. He's in our chat this morning, and he says that he spoke with Darth Dawkins, and now he goes by the name of Duncan Atheist, and he got the impression that he listens closely. And he may. But what I've always heard is that he goes by a script, a very distinct. He's really, whenever he starts a conversation with you, he's trying to herd you in a certain direction.
Well, let me be clear what I mean by I don't think he listens. I think most people think they listen, but most people, their standard of listening, their standard of careful reasoning is not at the level of rigor that is necessary to be a logician or mathematician. In other words, I don't think people realize that they're not really, as I hope I just demonstrated by kind of unpacking the use, I think, of the negation operator. Mm-hmm. They're not really deeply thinking through things. They don't stop, pause, and think for maybe 30 seconds. Right. It's not quite the same.
Well, to me, based on what I know about Darth Dawkins, it makes sense that he would do things like you're saying, misuse a certain type of operator or go into the debate trying to get you to do certain things, some kind of little wordplay or fallacy.
No, I don't think he was purposely trying to be disingenuous. To the contrary, I think he's new to logic and doesn't understand it as deeply as he probably assumes. Most people,
we don't have to both be wrong. We can both be right.
I mean, I may be included in that set, although I don't think I am, because I've done it for years, and right. It's my specialty.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's I guess what I'm saying is most people, their reasoning is just taking these English sentences, right, and putting them together. That's not really, in almost no sense in a formal logic class, like even on an undergraduate level, will you pass an exam doing that. That is not, you're relying on a structure that undergirds those symbols. And I don't think people are aware of the structure that they're relying on for truth preservation in their arguments.
No, they're probably not. Not in our world, they're not. With all the crazy going on. No, I would say they're not.
But it's also, I'm not interested in debating him. I'm interested. What I mean by that, is I'm interested. Suppose that a person makes a completely preposterous argument, right? Even if that's true, is that equivalent logically to a refutation of their position, not as they assert, but just in principle? Well, not necessarily, right? So my point is, I'm interested in having a genuine discourse about the subject matter, right. Which isn't quite the same as trying to one up someone necessarily.
I think it's interesting that you say that. I've wanted to have Darth Dawkins on my show for kind of the same reason, just to have a talk with him outside of the combative nature that he usually engages with atheists. I just don't know if he'd play nice or not. He may actually be that way, and he may not engage with you, is kind of where I'm going. Regardless, I mean, You might do it and he'll go, you're not listening to me, or you're not hearing my point, because I've heard he'll occasionally accuse you of interrupting or being somehow rude or something, and then bail on the conversation.
What I think we could try to do is have a time limit set for both of us, mm-hmm. and a rule that I'll impose it only on myself, in good faith, I suppose, if that even makes sense, that I'm not allowed to proceed analyzing his logical claims until I repeat them back to him to a level of satisfactory to him, that I'm not, strawmanning him beyond reasonable doubt.
Right.
Meaning I'll give him as long as he wants, within reason I'll even help him fortify his axiomatic claims, and, before I begin my excavation of them. Right. Because I'm not interested in, it's very easy to push someone into a logical fallacy that you've just artificially constructed like a trap, and then, to beat your chest to pretend that you're woke.
Right. I hear that's a regular tactic.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't either, to be honest. I told you pretty much my experience with the guy. I just kind of go on with what the other people tell me.
And I want to make clear,
Pardon me? I was going to ask, was that your first experience with him?
I'm not sure, because what if he goes by a different alias? I don't know. But
to your knowledge,
as far as I'm aware, I think so. Yeah. I only felt that, we had a guest speaker on, and I had to kind of I had to parameterize between where I shift the attention
Right.
and whether I derail from the conversation. And so it seemed that he wanted to have a much more in-depth discussion, but I don't know if it was a monologue or a dialogue that was intended. I don't claim to understand what was intended. It's difficult, I concede, to see the inside of a house through a keyhole.
Right. Well, in my experience with him, which I said is a couple of times, you and I are here talking. I'm talking with Christopher Stum today about Christopher Stum and what's going on in Christopher Stum's world. And he, in my experience, has come into the chat and try to either distract from the conversation, not talk about you, just exactly what you're talking about. You had a guest on your show and you stopped and engaged him instead of engaging your guest. You know, you engaged somebody in the chat, and that's exactly what he wants. You know, I mean, that was what he wanted for me. I was like, nah, I got no. He wanted me to change the subject, wanted to know this, wanted to know that. Matter of fact, he came in as an alias on another show as, I don't remember, some woman. He was pretending to be a woman, and he was attacking my co-host and trying to change the subject, not from what we're talking about from the guest, but from some kind of argument he's already had in the past with the co-host.
Right.
And he's trying to hijack the whole show.
It's unfortunate, but I think, to be honest, most arguments that you can read in English aren't remotely rigorous. Right. I don't think people have an inkling of what real rigor is.
That's true, but like 90% of us work under those conditions. Not all of us go to logic classes. None of this applies in law. This is normal nomenclature.
That's right.
You know,
I say that not to imply some kind of elitist implication, but rather because I have concerns about, sometimes I conjecture that one of the greatest barriers to knowledge and its acquisition, if possible, is the belief that people have it when they don't. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it seems sometimes when people believe that what they're doing is reasoning, right? And their rigor is just, let me use all this English to that.
Yeah. Wiki rigor.
Right. Even so, I guess to paint a picture, like UNC Chapel Hill, I think in 2014, like it's ranked at least 42nd in the world, just overall, right? Now, department-wise, that varies. So what does that ranking mean? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't mean anything, right? It could just be whoever got on Forbes' list. But at this college, there are approximately 22,000 students, maybe more, right? At least 22,000, and only 150 are able to make the cut for math majors, and only 6 are pure mathematics majors. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, you're right. In a way, beyond reasonable doubt, it's not the normative, the typical nomenclature. And so one of the motivations behind, I think, my channel was to kind of supersede some barriers. Right. In such a manner that I could still have a dialogue with most people, Yeah. I actually don't like to emphasize very much credentials. It's not that I think they're not important. It's that it's difficult to argue that they're either necessary or sufficient conditions for knowledge.
Unless you're trying to get a job.
I don't know. Yeah. Because some people, they don't have degrees, and
that's true. Yeah. That's true. You don't have to have a degree to be a smart person or to educate yourself. I'm very self-educated as well, or to my degree. Yeah. Not yours. I'm happy with where I am. Real quick, Joan says that she has heard that she's heard Darth Dawkins with Richard Madsen and Shannon Q, and in her opinion, he cannot play nice. I've never seen it, but I've heard. Well, I did see a little bit of the thing with her and Shannon Q. I take that back, but I didn't watch the whole thing.
To be honest, some of my motivations wouldn't just be even to persuade him. I would like to talk with him because I'm very convinced that he's, like most people, way out of his depth. He doesn't have an inkling of what real rigor is, and I would like to give people who are on the fence but follow him and think he has good points an opportunity to be shown how easily what seem inassailable propositions that he's making can be sundered. Yeah.
That'd be fun to watch.
It's a lot of people, and that's not to say that that's even unique to people who argue religiously. I've seen people who argue for atheism make many logical mistakes too, and but at the same, it may have been a mistake to even bring him up. I think it was just in passing that I said that. I'm not trying to, I don't think, imply malcontent or anything like that.
Well, whenever you we've got multiple levels of nomenclature going on. You've got the way you speak in a logic class, an undergraduate logic class, and stuff like that. If you go into an undergraduate logic class and speak like somebody on the street, you're going to look like a fool because people are going to go, blah, blah, blah. By the vice versa, whenever you turn that around and you try to apply that kind of rigor to people who are just in normal conversation,
right?
You come off looking like a fool, a jerk,
perhaps even pompous, right? And so it's like, it's also potentially futile in the way that you could walk into a psych ward and start debating with the mental patients who are unable to discern, that there aren't, elephants in the room talking to them.
You're swinging high.
Right. And it's, so it's like,
that was a good one.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. So, with the situations like Darth Dawkins, though, he sticks himself out there. It's a matter. He's going to come at you. He came at you, in fact, in your own chat while you were trying to have a conversation. He made a run at you.
I don't know. I think I conjecture that you could replace me. You could replace me with any person that said the things I said, and it was more what I represented than who I was. I don't think it was me that he was actually fighting against. If you understand what I mean by that, I think
I understand. Yeah. Well, no, I kind of exemplified that by saying your point by stating that he did that to me as well. He did the same thing.
Well, again, it's a conjecture. I don't know.
You must be fun at parties.
I think I am. I usually
it's like you're a serial contrarian. Anything I say, you're going to say no, and then go forward and explain to me why I'm wrong.
I do believe I said I'm not sure, right?
No, yeah. Okay, carry on. Coffee. Synchronized drinking. Yay, they're appreciating our coffee.
I hope that's not how I come across, because to be honest, that's actually not my intention.
Gotcha.
I'm not claiming.
All I was trying to say was Darth Dawkins came into your chat during your show and attacked you. I witnessed it. You just described it, and then you're like, "Oh, I don't know that's what happened." Why did you do that to me? Pourquoi? You knew what I was saying. We're not in a logic class. You knew we're in common public, and you knew what I was saying. Why did you do that? Why have you done that almost like a third or a half of the time? You know what I'm saying, but you're trying to force a certain level of specificity on me.
Specificity, yes.
Thank you. On me, that's not really required for this level of conversation. So is it just that you're trying to make me look stupid, or is it trying to make yourself look smart? Why do you keep doing that to me?
I think what you'll find, like Chris, is for me, this is relaxed. I'm not trying to make someone feel stupid. I'm sorry if that's how it comes across. I
was just curious.
The way that I imagine it isn't really like I'm not sure if it's necessarily necessary that I be in a logic class that I should try to think rationally. I don't know.
Okay, well, I apologize for changing the subject. Let's go back to Darth Dawkins, because he at least claims, somebody is in the chat claiming to be Darth Dawkins and is again talking to you. Now they're going to come to my chat and attack you. The funds of morning shows. So I don't know if this is really Darth Dawkins. I'm just going to read it out to you. I don't know if you can see the chat if you have it open.
I can. I've got the live comments, but I can't see anything.
Right. That's a different program. So it says, this is Darth Dawkins. Chris claimed he did not know why I am banned from test chat. Which Chris are you talking about? Me or Christopher? We'll call him Christopher and me Chris.
I think he's referring to you, because there's been no such ban on my end as far as I'm aware.
I thought I actually did say why. I said quite distinctly why he Okay, now we're talking about, now he's talking about you. He did not attack you, he says. He simply asked questions that he refused to answer. And see, that's what I'm talking about. If you are Darth, I'm not going to go reading all your stuff yet because I got lots of stuff going on. But I mean, you come into the chat and we're not talking about this or that or this or that. You came into my chat the very first time and you attacked Neil, and Neil wasn't even on the show. And you try to distract all the people in the chat from my show to talk about what you want to talk about, which is not even related to anything. And you keep forcing it or asking questions that have nothing to do with the show. You're a disruptive force. And I didn't ban you. One of my mods banned you. One of my mods from a different place. I haven't banned anybody, I don't think. So,
well, I don't know, but from what he said about my not responding to him the first and now this time, I think that I would ask, did he actually watch the video of what I explained after he, I think, left? Because I think I answered actually very comprehensively then and a few moments ago in this conversation what he was saying. I conjecture that he didn't like what my answer was or answers were, but you know exactly what would be a non-answer philosophically.
I understand. Well, he says, when I encountered Christopher Stum on his show, he categorically refused to answer a simple question. The question was, do you assert that God is the precondition of all temporal facts? Now, see, that's the whole deal. We're not going to talk about that now. If you and Darth want to go debate that topic, you're welcome to, but he's going to try to get you to answer that question now on my show.
I got you.
And my show is not about that. You know, we're talking about this now. Of course, actually, we really were talking about him beforehand. And currently, the topic of the conversation is indeed him. So I wouldn't mind if you felt content to answer his questions, because now we are really talking about Darth. I mean, really, it's part of the deal. But because we're actually describing why we're talking about him. So I mean, it's not an issue now. If you want to address that.
Do you have a screen share option that I could use?
Well, really, the way to do it would be to open up the show on another screen.
All right.
You know,
because I was going to actually go into some explanation. Do I assert that God is a necessary precondition to all facts? Is the question, right?
I think so. Yeah. Too long. Do you want to have? My apologies.
I would like to just demonstrate that the form of the assertion actually doesn't even guarantee that God exists.
Okay.
Meaning, I could, even if I say I will assert, right? So not only is it not true that if I don't assert a proposition, that the negation requires that I assume not be, because again, if I'm not wet, I'm not necessarily dry. I could be dead, and my body doesn't exist such that it could be dry, right? So it's true that a subset of the negation includes the thing dimensionally in opposition, but it's not that my only two options are I assert no or I assert yes. But furthermore, even if I agree, a propositional form, God as a necessary condition, right, to a necessary precondition to all facts. The claim is of the form P is necessary for Q. Okay, and that means that if P is necessary for Q, then Q implies P. Right. Okay, but now if we assume that that's true, then Q is the claim that there's a basis of facts, right?
I would assume.
Yeah. Now, the conditional can be vacuously true, meaning I can reject that there exists a basis of facts, right? And the conditional, therefore, can allow the consequent from the assumed false antecedent to be true or false, preserving the true structure of the conditional.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
On the assumption that there is no basis of facts, I could then argue for or against the existence of God. So meaning I could concede the conditional form, but it doesn't even follow that the consequent would be denied. Now, if my aim was to deny the consequent, I wouldn't deny the antecedent, because then that allows the consequent to possibly be true or false, right? It would be the fallacy of denying that hypothesis. But the point I'm making is, if I assert that the conditional itself is true, okay, not the propositions alone, but the conditional that they together form, then actually that doesn't even give me what I think he's trying to get me to concede, which is the existence of God. So there's so many problems with the question that to me are demonstrative of a person with a vacuous understanding of logic. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. I would have just said no.
I think you're right. Well, but I don't know. Well, I don't know.
I'm kidding. I'm just being funny.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was a great answer, though. I hope, Darth, if you're there, I hope you got it all. Now, see, Darth actually put an email in there, and I'm going to try to write that down and give. It just depends. If you're going to come in my chat, dude, and you're going to just distract every time, then no. If you're going to come in and you're going to say hi and be cool, that's cool. But my experience with you, every time, if this is really, pardon me, Chris, forgive me, every time you've come in and you've distracted from the chat, you've attacked my guests, you've asked them questions not related to what's going on in the show, and you try to hijack my show. If you want to come and hang,
although this time
is not. No, we were actually talking to you. It's like, speak the devil's name and he shall appear, and you appeared, dude. Yeah. That was awesome. Moderators, please don't ban George Taylor unless he starts becoming a real douche and starts cussing or whatever. Being a douche, but just don't ban him. Let me talk to him, because if you are really the Darth Dawkins, I would like to have you on the show as a person, not as a debater, not to argue with me or anything like that, just to chill and have a morning show fun kind of thing. I just don't know if that'll happen. I don't know if that would work.
And I want to make clear that if Darth agreed to talk with me, I would even help him try to make more robust his attempted arguments. Meaning, I'm not even trying to just gut him. I'm trying to say, all right, let's see if we can extrapolate a kernel of wisdom from this, even if it could be better, more well formed. I don't think. I think one could be forgiven for assuming that I'm just out to get him, but I don't even know if that's my intent.
Right.
It's just that in the manner that he appeared,
in the manner,
I had to.
I'm sorry.
If he did, I don't know. I had to prioritize between prioritizing my guest and going down a rabbit hole with him. And in that time, I did not think beyond reasonable doubt that he was listening to me as much as talking at me.
Yes. Understand. That's how you felt about the situation.
Yeah.
I understand.
I think so.
You believe. That's how you believe. I understand. Thank you for qualifying. That's funny, man. I kill me sometimes. So I would enjoy, now you got your own channel. So if you want to host him on your own channel, that's fine, and you guys can talk about it. I would love to host you guys. I've been wanting to have him on my channel again, just to. Sorry, I'm reading the chat again, just to try to have a normal conversation with him and not engage. I'd like to just talk and have a morning show and find out, dude, how long you been doing this? How long you been engaging atheists? What do you got going on? What's your thing? What got you into it? That's what we ask you. What got you into your numbers or your you were always an atheist. These are the kind of questions I would enjoy having him. I don't particularly care to debate him or argue with him.
I don't know if I could say I always was, just because I don't know if I always existed. But
yes, pardon me, my slip. I meant just since the time that you have been.
Well, see, it gets more complicated because what do I mean by me, right? Because there's the person that was born at the date of my birth,
right,
and there's the question of whether I am that person.
That's a good question.
And in the persistence of personhood across time, I don't know. It's a difficult philosophical question whether I am that person.
Right. Hey, I actually understand that. If you were to guess which of those people, just offhand, which of the people I was speaking to, the one that was just born or the one sitting in front of me, if you had to guess, just off the top of your head, random, which would you think I was speaking to?
Well, but just hear me out though. Okay. What I'm saying is it may be the case that I'm still that person.
Yeah, it may.
So that's what I'm saying. It's not clear.
That's wonderful. That's a great answer. In that case, it doesn't matter.
Well, I don't know.
It wouldn't matter in that case.
Well, it might because, like I said, it would determine whether I am that person. Perhaps, right?
Possibly.
Possibly.
There's Richard. I'm sorry. Darth Dawkins asked why his thing was banned. Man, I really don't know why you're. Oh, I know why. Darth, the reason why your comment was deleted by Stream Elements bot was because you're not a moderator and you posted a link. You posted your email. You posted it for me and I got it. So as long as you got, right, I'm not going to make you a moderator. That would just be stupid.
So you've got his email. So Darth, we can get in touch,
Right. Yeah.
I think there's other things we could discuss besides Darth at this point.
I got to do the same thing to Darth that I would do, or to you that I would do to Darth. Darth has not given me permission to give you his email address. I don't mean that in any offense. I'm just saying, Darth, if you don't mind. Yeah. So Darth, if you don't mind, I'll give him your email address, and we all can work up something. But that's why you're not a moderator, and therefore, you're right. So we get it. We all get it. Attack, no attack, comments only, questions of disagreement. Got you. Understood. The questions are not appropriate is the point we're trying to make. Not appropriate normally for the time in the show that's going on. I got a show and we're talking to Bonzo the Clown, whomever Bonzo the Clown may be, about how to clown and what kind of shoes you buy and what kind of hats you wear. And you come in and you're telling me, dude, Bonzo the Clown, is that Bonzo's name? Bonzo, tell me how you fix your brakes on your car, dude. I really want to know, do you use this kind of brake or that kind of brake? And I'm like, dude, we're not talking about brakes. We're talking about clown shoes and clown noses. Could you please give it a rest? And you're like, no. And you disrespect me in my chat and you talk about brakes instead of clown noses. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Is it too difficult to comprehend? Because if it's too hard to comprehend, you're never going to get what this guy over here's got saying. He's using big $5 words, and you're never going to get it if you don't understand the basic concept that you come into a chat and you talk about shit that's not relevant to what's going on. Get it? You're receiving what I'm broadcasting?
In fairness, though, that could potentially sound rather derogatory. Like,
which part?
In fairness, just like, like saying, it also doesn't follow that if he doesn't understand that concept, he won't necessarily follow my logic. Maybe.
Oh, well, I understand. Oh, I appreciate what you're saying. Yes, sir. Indeed, that's true. You're going on the assumption or the presumption that I was not intending to be offensive.
I don't know.
I was intending to be offensive. Therefore, that negates your comment.
I got you.
I can play that game too, brother.
Well, I mean,
I'm not as dumb as I look.
But then there is the question of the, like, I suppose you're doing this for a purpose, right? It's meant to be satirical. Is that right?
Me or him?
I don't know. You? Shall we ask you?
Me. Well, he's talking about what's going on in the chat. I was explaining to him literally. I was trying to be quite literal. Was I not literal enough? Do I need to explain it to you? What I just said to him in the chat?
I don't know what literal means.
So much for a math degree if you don't have a dictionary. The Daily Atheist, I'd like to hear more from Christopher Stum about common errors he's noticed people making about propositions. This is right up your alley, brother.
But Chris, when I say I don't know what literal means, I didn't mean that literally. You understand?
I do. I actually do understand. Do you understand? Sure. If I use dumb people talk, do you get it? I don't know. Anyway, Randolph Richardson wanted to know. He'd like to hear. Did we lose? See, George. Never mind, dude. I will send him an email. Duncan, I will send you Duncan, George, whoever you are. Again, Randolph Richardson asked you a question. I'd like to hear more from Christopher Stum about common errors he noticed people making about propositional logic and whatnot. Beyond everything I say.
I'd say some of the most common errors are that people are very good at finding what they're looking for. What I mean by that is they tend to extrapolate a consequent that doesn't even follow from their basis. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if I assume that there was a beverage to drink in the fridge, mm-hmm. and then I investigate the fridge and discover that it appears it's not there, right?
Right.
If there's one and only one other person I believe I live with, I might extrapolate from that they must have taken it, but it doesn't make it impossible that some, I don't know, lesbian dance theorist who's also a car poor expert and an expert thief, invaded my house, right, and took it without my knowledge. But the point I'm making is we would like, right, to be thorough and rule out those possibilities, no matter how juvenile they may seem, if we're reasoning rigorously. And very often what people will do is they will take a multivariable system and reduce it to a pseudo unidimensional analysis. And make inferences even from that minimal analysis, that basis, that just do not follow. And they don't seem to understand that by follow, we're not talking about, does it feel like it makes sense to you? We're talking about a truth functional structure that is truth preserving. That is to say, it's more about the form of the argument. So for example, Chris, if I said, if it's on the assumption that you are either a dog or a cat, right? Does it follow that you are a dog?
But what if I'm wet?
No, but all right. So if that's
am I a wet dog or am I a dry dog, or does my body not exist?
If you are not, right, if that's not applicable, then the conditional is vacuously true. So it's actually not a problem.
I hate it when that happens.
But on the assumption that either of those is true, right, the disjunction, right, could you infer the consequent? Well, maybe. It depends, because it's a disjunction, so it only needs at least one of those propositional truth claims to be true, right, for the compound propositional truth claim to be true. That is either one or the other, and so it may not necessarily follow. But that's just it's a basic example. I'd say also people don't seem to. It's difficult to really answer the question like that because it may very much depend on the person. But I'd say one of the most common is that they're very good at finding what they're looking for, and very often the method by which they reason to get there is just stringing along sentences that seem to substantiate what they initially surmised. Genuine reasoning, if you're really doing it, is more like it should feel like it's not clear where something is going to go. Right. It's actually, it should be very suspicious when you have a basis and with very minimal effort, you've just arrived at your consequent. Because if you're really being rigorous, it's very, very difficult to do. It's like, and that's another thing I've noticed is funny is that of the span of all possible state vectors predictive of where a person perhaps would end up from a particular basis, people very often tend to converge within close proximity to their initial thoughts when arguing.
Right.
So I think it's difficult for me to know, because I don't know.
Have you ever wondered if the overuse of logic sometimes makes things just too much harder than they should be? Sounds like you could get paralyzed in your use of logic as to whether is that pen purple or is that pen yellow? Well, it's a little bit of both. And now you're just going to sit there and logic yourself out of what color this pen is rather than just doing something else. I mean,
it may be tenable, but we're back in a disturbing situation where, my assertion of that better not rely or depend on any utility of logic, right? So it's like, if that were the case, I'm not sure we could assert it to be the case.
Right. Maybe it just feels that way. We're using logic, overusing it for, just for fun. Are you this way when you go to the grocery store? They hand you your change. Here's your change, and you're like, "Well, I don't know. Is this my change? Is this change real?" Do you start applying that to that person?
I think so.
Do you want ketchup with it?
I don't think I'd interrogate them too much. But yeah, I think this is just.
That's an interesting process. Fascinating minds you must have.
I don't know.
Well, from my perspective, let me qualify that. From my perspective, you have an interesting mind.
I hope it doesn't come across as pedantic or annoying.
That was exactly what I was scribbling over here, was pedantic, annoying. But no. That's cool. No.
But, it reminds me.
Keeps me on my toes.
In one of my conjectures, I was discussing with a string theorist in my department, about a current question that's kind of open in physics is whether space and time are continuous, which isn't really a term mathematicians or scientists that do theoretical physics would use. They would talk about a space being metrized, compact, or complete. And I just recently proposed to this gentleman. I don't know if I don't think I'll say his name because I don't know if he wants to be mentioned, but okay. We're trying to find a physical mechanism. So it needs to be understood that this is, even if there's mathematics behind it, it's purely conjecture and it should be treated as such. But, the idea is if space were continuous, then for any points in that space, everywhere throughout that space, it should be what's called everywhere dense, which means that, and it should be everywhere, having a nested interval property of sorts, if you will, which is to say that between any 2 points, I should always be able to find a point in between. But a problem that emerges is really associated with measurement, which is if we try to look at the boundary cases of too large a scale, how do we develop a measuring apparatus that doesn't skew our results? But too small a scale, like down to the epsilon, equal to a Planck second, how do we measure that, right?
Right.
So a proposal to kind of circumvent the potential problem associated with the constraints of measurement insofar as scale is concerned is if it should be everywhere dense and everywhere continuous, then on any measurable scale, the idea is to use Einstein's special and general relativity. And the idea is this: if it's truly continuous, then whenever you play with the space-time dilation, if we chose what's called a Cauchy sequence of reference frames, meaning if we choose a mechanism that induces on a physical object a change in reference frame, e.g. it distorts space-time in such a way as to converge on a particular value of space-time, then we can now choose any such distortion and just set the mechanism defining that. And if we ever get to a point where we find a hole in space-time, so to speak, where, in other words, we choose a delta, such that for that delta, there should be an epsilon that is the space-time limit, if you will, of the sequence. That is the Cauchy sequence in the metrized space. If it's complete space, we should find no such hole. We shouldn't find a point that when we go to measure it, it's not there. If we did, it would imply possibly the existence of a new kind of singularity. Because if it takes a finite amount of time for the mechanism to converge, right, but the frequency becomes unbounded, then it's a kind of singularity that's only arrivable through a sequence that is a Cauchy sequence of transformations of reference frames. So it's like a new type of weird singularity, and it may contest the fundamental existence everywhere of space-time. I don't know, but it's an experiment that we're trying to find a physical mechanism for to test.
Can we call it a glory singularity? Or a glory hole? Sorry, I had to go there. Neil is in the chat. I'm sorry, pardon me. Neil is in the chat, and Duncan, or Darth is already engaging Neil in my chat. Back to your singularity. Pardon me for the levity. Carry on.
But that's like, it reminds me of like that's I think an interesting open question but it's difficult to discern.
Okay, real quick, thank you for that. That was enlightening. I enjoy. That was one of my favorite ones. Randolph Richardson wants to know. He said I should have phrased it differently. I've found myself in that world often this conversation, Randolph. Perhaps your guest can talk about the problem of conjecture and any ideas he has for what might be the reason it so often occurs. That's a goodie.
I would say most likely one of the fundamental problems of if and when it does occur, why conjecture occurs, may be systemic to discrete systems of logic. Meaning, if for any discrete system, meaning pictures, language, sound partitioned in a countable set, these are all what we mean by symbolic systems of language, really, that are discrete. As long as you can define what's called a function that maps from the set of positive integers onto any particular thing in question. So the nth such variation in a sound, because although we would imagine that the vocal range that we can elicit is continuous, but if matter is quantized, and our muscles are composed of quantized matter, it's not clear that they can truly have a continuous range of motion. But if you let epsilon, that is the space-time interval, get small enough, they will have a discrete countable set of motions. And so if there is a relation between those muscular motions and the sounds we make, our sounds are actually countable, not necessarily continuous. It's not clear, And by our sounds, I'm not talking about those sounds resulting from potentially continuous phenomenon like energy propagating through space-time. But I digress. What I'm trying to say is, it may be that the very existence of boundary propositions that are neither provable nor disprovable for any discrete system, which underlies almost any apparatus which we approach any subject, would imply that sometimes we talk past each other and argue about a proposition that, for all we know, isn't fundamentally descriptive of the metaphysical thing we attempt to reference, but symptomatic of the discrete language we use to reference it. In other words, it's not even clear whether we're arguing, for all we know, over the very limitations of language or the epistemological problems and truth claims associated with a metaphysical thing. So it's very often why you'll see even a scientist talking about something, someone comes in, says, that's not true, there's no proof for that, right? And then because the scientist goes, I can't prove it, or a mathematician or whatever, people then get into this back and forth, and that's where conjecture starts to seem like rigor. And so, but fundamentally, we don't know if even for all our rigor, we have anything tantamount to what we could constitute as knowledge. So I would conjecture that is probably a structure undergirding the phenomenology that may be predictive of some of these tendencies. I hope that is a fair answer.
Yes. Somebody else asked you a question. We got a lot going on in the chat. Darth is still playing in the chat. I've only seen Darth text blocked once. Gary Priestley gets blocked a lot. What's going on, Gary? Why is it blocking you? I don't know. I may need to work on my chat, my stream bot. It's blocking people who for just nothing, apparently. I need to work on that. So that's not related to him. And I've only seen one of his posts get blocked. So he's still going on about the things he was going on about. In fact, talking about you. And now he's engaging with the two hosts of your show, talking about you in my chat during my show. And this is kind of the things we were talking about. Normally, I would actually have him on my show, and that's fine. If he would come in my show and participate and ask you questions, normal questions about whatever we're talking about, that would be cool. But he comes in and he's disruptive and he takes over the entire show. Now we're talking about him again instead of talking about you and whatever you're talking about. See?
Yeah.
And whenever he asks why he gets banned, because the show's not about you, brother. It's not about you. It's about Chris. You know? So anyway, going on. I'll send him an email anyway against my... I don't know. Can he turn the stuff off? Can you come on my show, Darth, and just chill out and have some laughs and be cool? Or are you going to be a douche? We'll find out. Maybe we'll find out. Anyway, Chris, carry on. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get distracted. I just wanted to let you know what's going on since you can't see the chat. They're still talking about... Matter of fact, he still believes that you were rude to him during your show since we're talking about it. And I was there. I didn't think you were rude at all. You were trying to interview a different guest. That's what people are trying to explain. It just doesn't seem to get through. I don't guess I know enough about the situation. I am using conjecture.
It's perhaps as I conjecture to you that people are great at finding what they're looking for.
There you go. I think, I don't know. We'll see. I've got his email address here. And he's got mine. All right. So I don't know if I should. Yeah, I should. If I put it out there, it's in the thing. You can email me, chris@chrismallard.com. Darth, let's get you on the show, buddy. And let's see. I would be willing to. Now, I've got actually, you said you wanted to, not to debate necessarily, but you said you'd be willing to have a conversation with him.
Because a debate almost implies that I'm locked into a position that I'm committed to. And I don't submit any pretense of knowledge. I don't know.
Right. That might be interesting. There'd be a lot of dancing going on. Because he's going to try to pin you to actual, do you believe X? Or can you say fine. X? And your whole bag is kind of dancing out of not actually affirming that you believe or, not asserting a positive. Not
necessarily, but I don't think that's well defined. I understand that's how people think, but that's, again, it's back to the whole, I think what people are doing. All right. So most people, how they learn logic isn't by actually learning the language. Okay. Not that it's a language. I don't want to misinform people. Okay. But what I mean by that is it's most people's understanding of knowledge or even logic is tantamount to how some people who try to learn a language by memorizing isolated words.
Right.
Okay. They think they understand. He can, if that was the intention, he can try that all he wants.
Right.
The funny thing is it won't work.
Right. Well, I don't know. He's never said it's like I don't know. You might, if you get the urge and you want to do it, go back and watch the show and read his comments and see what you think. But again, as long as Darth, if you want, let me know and I'll give him your email address and you guys can do the thing on your channel, or I'd be willing to host it on my channel on an evening stream. Would have a debate. I'm actually going to run. I got three sets of debates or conversations, depending on how they want to look. I don't think I'd be a very good debater because obviously I'm not very rigorous in my. I don't know enough about how to debate, to be honest. But then I'm too passionate. I'd be like, fuck you, you're wrong. You're an idiot. You're just wrong. And here's why you're wrong. I wouldn't be good at debating. But you, my friend, would be wonderful at debate/conversations because you've got the rules down. You certainly seem to. Yep. And Christopher was asked a simple question and completely dodged and then used the question to segue into a monologue. Now, he's talked about not being disruptive. I'm going to scroll up here and I'm going to read at least 2 or 3 times that he said that exact same thing. It's like almost word for word. I'm going to roll it up.
I feel like we've already...
We have. Here he is. He was rude. I asked a simple question. He steadfastly dodged the question, then muted and kicked me in monologue. I can keep going up. It's the same thing. I was not being disruptive. I was responding to the criticism. He just won't give up. It's just the same thing over and over and over. Come on, dude. That's why you get kicked from our chat. We're not here to talk about you, brother.
Well, like I said, I think people who have any doubts of or would like to see what actually or what they believe occurred can watch for themselves. I don't think that's what most people will conclude.
He's made the claim several times in my chat that my moderators have been blocked him. We explored that. One time he was blocked, and that was for putting an email address. And yet he's claimed that his comments have been blocked since. And I'm watching the chat, and nowhere has my chat said he's been blocked. Now, Gary Priestley's been getting blocked a lot, and I don't know why. Sorry, brother. Gary's like, what's the answer to the number 4? And my bot's like, ban you, asshole. I don't know why. But for some reason, it's really after Gary. But I mean, it has not. So go watch and see how dishonest this gentleman is.
Is there anyone? Well, maybe
I feel it's dishonest.
What he's saying.
Well, that maybe he does. But we've got a record right here. And here he is again. Go ahead.
I think I've met some people who, I was surprised at how good they were at convincing themselves of what they thought was the truth. And, I remember I've talked to 2 people who believed, I don't know if they were pretending, but they claimed to believe the world was flat. One of them, I taught basics of calculus. And then we used the calculus to slowly lead step by step to the conclusion that didn't make sense. He changed his mind. The other person, I don't know. I don't understand what they were thinking.
Right. Yeah. Well, sometimes people are so married to their disbelief or whatever it is, their poor logic or there's no way to convince them. A lot of people don't want to be convinced. They know it doesn't matter what you say. Debating people, how many people have you seen? Now, you've said yourself one did, one didn't. But in debates, how many times are religious, especially of a religious nature, despite how well the atheist or whomever argues, how often have you ever seen a Christian right there during the debate go, you know what, you're right. I'm done with Christianity. I've never seen it happen, ever.
Or maybe, shall we say, just in general, how often do we see people arguing over something, concede the opposition that might have a tenable point?
Right. I'll tell you what happened. Our chat is now calming down a little bit. One of a friend of mine, Kristen, best name ever. Hi, Kristen. She showed up to the show, and apparently she realized that it was Darth Dawkins in the chat, and she kicked him from the chat. That's why, because he's so disruptive to what's going on in the show. And now we go back to normal. I need to get this guy on the show. Sorry that Darth is so trashed. Even you and I, there was that we rubbed shields in the or I think we did in the chat there, and we got over it. We got past it. It was nothing. We did not sit here talking about that this whole time. No, we didn't. We talked about other stuff in your math and your logic and your reason. This guy here, you bumped shields with him in your chat, and he just won't. He's going to stalk you. your life.
I mean,
he's gonna hump your leg.
I'm really busy, so I don't think I have the time to because what I hope if he's watching this later on, or currently through YouTube, realizes is I'm still an academic, and so I still have to study for 10+ hours a day, right? And at least, because the stuff is really complicated. Like some of these systems of equations I deal with have at least 32 independent variables. So it's I hope he understands that if I don't respond as much or as often, I'm not trying to be dismissive, but also as the channel grows, he's probably not the only person who loves to engage us in attempted discourse, if that's his intention. That's on the channel. We're trying to be transparent, as soon as we can about the almost necessity that we'll have to filter. By filter, I mean be selective over which comments we respond to and which we don't.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. One of the things that somebody in the comment mentioned was they said, Darth, man, if you want a channel, go make your own channel. That's something he ought to do. I believe now he can still hear and see us. We can't see any comments he makes. If he's making them, we don't see it because one of my moderators, blocked him. She wasn't here whenever we had the first part of the conversation, but then he went ahead and exemplified why he gets blocked.
I think I answered not only again in the initial instance in which this occurred, which I actually went really deep into an explanation. I think I answered then and then twice now.
You've answered.
By now, I don't literally now, but in this, throughout this conversation, twice at least, that I implicitly gave an answer to the question that I think was more than adequate to cast doubt on the question and its formulation. So at this point, I think that either this person doesn't understand, or maybe you might have a point in questioning this individual's motives. I don't know.
Well,
or something else.
I have a thought as to what may be the issue. See, now he hasn't really mentioned the question. It's not the question. The question is not his problem anymore. The question is how you treated him in the thing. Now, he has asked the question as part of, the reason why I'm upset and the reason why I'm here saying this again and again and again is because this is what you did. You ignored me. Then you didn't answer my very simple question. Then you kicked me. Yes, question is a part of it. And you have, again, answered that question several times. I think that's just only a piece of it.
But also, I'm unless I was plugged into the matrix or something, I'm very confident I did. I just don't think he understood that what I was doing was answering.
Yes. Well, yes, you did answer the question. That's what I'm saying. You did indeed answer the question. You have not absolved yourself of being rude to him and blocking him from the chat. That's what I'm talking about.
Which is possible, but and that's part of why I tried to come on thinking that he would probably be in your chat and make an implicit invitation. All right. Because I myself was not sure if I handled the situation as well as I could. And I think to, because I could understand how a person, it's kind of like what you conjectured about earlier, that maybe I come across as pompous in a way that I don't intend. And so I could understand how a person may have had that impression, which is implicitly why I wanted to try to reach out and extend an opportunity
to him. Yes, I saw that. Yeah, you did. Of course, I think he missed the first part of the show, so he may have missed it the first time when you said that, whenever you covered those parts of the topic. But I with him, I don't know, to be honest. I just know that every time I've engaged him, it's been like that. We've got 27 different people watching, and not a single one of them is doing what he does in disrupting the entirety of the show for the purpose of disrupting the entirety of the show. And he does it every time he's been in my show, Hey, grumpy old dude is saying, why do you ignore my question? That's the same thing that Darth was doing.
Isn't that an interesting question, the way it's posed? Why do you ignore my question?
Right.
It's a question.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Well, he actually does have I had to roll up. I had many things going on. He knows, though. He's seen me enough to know I get distracted. And now we got a lot of folk watching, so I get distracted even more because I'm all nervous. I get nervous. Grumpy old dude wants to know Solomon's Lake. I got to roll up. To find the actual question. That's not the question. That's just a reference to the question. There we go. Grumpy old, no, that's Gary Priest. All right. So he wants to know about Solomon's Lake. And do you know about, here it is. Has Christopher ever looked at the measurements for the Lake of King Solomon in 2 Kings of the King James Version of the Bible?
Not that I'm aware of. Why does he ask? Or she?
And it's Grumpy Old Dude, and it is he, him. And let me find out why he asked. He even said why he asked. Stream Elements is just kicking. Oh, now it's blocking. Now I see it. Never mind. Not about. It's not about you anymore, brother. It's not about you. There we go. Nope, that's not about you either. Sorry. I brought up Solomon's Lake because I'd like to see if it is in fact mathematically impossible. I'm unsure of the notion of what goes on about. He's grumpy. I don't know about. I don't know about it. He's defining. You could have them spelled. Oh, I see. Yeah.
I'd have to like look at the calculations, ruminate over the system of equations.
Right.
Because I don't know what a person means by mathematically impossible to measure. What does it mean to measure something? To make a comparison over two metrizable things, right?
Right.
Because technically what you do to measure is you define a set A and a set B that are metrizable on some parameter. And you're defining a function between them. And you're basically trying to formulate a mapping between the sets that defines a correlation coefficient of how the cardinalities compare. Right, something like that. So,
I think I conjecture, a good word, that what he's talking about is in the Bible. It claims that the lake is X, Y, Z size, when actually that, I believe the question is impossible. But since you're not familiar with the story, it doesn't matter, right? Because you don't.
Well, let us say that even if the Bible were wrong about that, right? Even if that's true. I don't see how that comes anywhere close to refuting the possible existence of a God. Right? That could just be, okay, someone wrote something incorrect.
That's true. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so it's like I feel like that's part of the problem is we're not gonna be able to answer those kinds of questions merely by showing, hey, this Bible is replete with logical fallacies and errors. I think maybe that will. In fact, I conjecture that you don't even need to play that game. You know, if you understand what I explained about discrete systems of logic and that the Bible is a written discrete system, it can't possibly lead to knowledge because of that. It'll have boundary propositions existent within it because of its discreteness. So it's like, you don't even need to play that game. It's if you're using a discrete system of logic going into any system of propositional truth claims, you're already fucked.
Right.
You know, that's why I'm trying to find a way to circumvent that if possible. And the way to do that is not to pretend that Gödel's incompleteness theorems don't apply to discrete systems of logic. It's actually to assume that they're true and try to define a continuous system and show that those two assumptions require that those properties can't exist in continuous systems of logic. But you can't, ironically, shall we say, use them.
Right. So you're on what's the name of you guys' channel? I forget. Is it because they changed the name recently?
It's Guild of Inquiry.
Guild of Inquiry.
It's just, I suppose it's supposed to be like a live interactive dialogue in which, I suppose we're trying to motivate questions. It's not that we're trying to avoid answers. You know, it's just that if and when potentially substantive answers are given, there will be, if and when possible, a concession to uncertainty and openness to dialogue, and perhaps even punctuating such substantive answers with, possible counterexamples and thus potential questions.
And okay, so you guys are not specifically about religion necessarily.
That's right, as far as I'm aware.
Right. Okay, so what is your take or your view? Do you have any activist views about religion, anti-religion, or are you specifically about logic and the application of logic?
I don't know what I'm about.
Well, let me see if I can rephrase the question. You're fun. All right. So when you're not doing this, so in other words, you don't seek out theists to debate.
Not that I'm aware.
Okay. Well, if you did, I would hope you'd be aware of it. You're a pretty smart guy. I suspect you would be aware of it. If you did it consciously. You may not do it consciously, and I could understand that. Yeah. They may seek you out. Why would Darth Dawkins be up against you, though? You're really more about what you're about, not you. You're not a challenge to him at all. I don't know why he would come to your group and start trouble with you. I don't get that. Not that he needs a reason.
Yeah, I don't know.
Neil, the 604 atheist, he is in the chat. Now, I did tell you Neil really loved deconversion stories, but you don't have one. You're a cradle atheist or a cradle. See, I say that, and I know you're a cradle non-believer, or you're a you're a cradle something. You've never been a believer, however you would like to phrase that.
Right.
Does Neil take those stories? Neil, does Neil like cradle atheists? Forgive the expression. He'll respond sooner or later. He's listening. He's talking. Remember Sammy Jenkins. Good morning, Sammy Jenkins. And of course, I still have this Leanne Lord. I've got this.
Wait, so here's one thing I wonder about is like, what would a God be? And I don't mean that in the sense of like how people necessarily try to define it, right? Like, is the concept in principle even, is there a thing that would be a God metaphysically, right? And what would that be? Would we define it as I don't know, because it may be complex in that optimization of one parameter might, depending on the system, result in a minimization of some other metrizable applicable parameter. And so it's like, I don't know.
But anything that's supernatural, pardon the expression, not my expression, their expression, anything that's supernatural is going to supersede all of those mathematical laws or all those rigors or all those brackets. So how do you define?
Well, you're still relying though on, to make that inference, a structure of logic.
There you go.
That's a conditional claim.
And they don't
given that this thing is supernatural, that's what I'm saying. People don't even realize that they're using the structure that they often attempt to refute. Now that doesn't mean that their claim couldn't be tenable. It just means that there may be, if it was the case, a problem in its assertion, which, it's not clear.
Richard Madsen has a question for you. Richard Madsen is a very interesting, I don't want to say the word theist. I got to be honest, I would be ill representing Mr. Richard Madsen if I said anything about what he is. I would just simply have to allow him to define himself for you. But he's a very interesting and intelligent person. I enjoy, despite the fact that our beliefs are significantly different, they may not actually be as different as I think. And I've enjoyed engaging with him several times. He'd probably enjoy having you on his show as well. But he asked a question for you. If that discrete system within the Bible did make falsible, novel predictions from outside the knowledge range of this earth, then would it be true?
See, but the problem is all right, so I'd have to go into a screen share and explain, because I don't think he understands what I explained, perhaps because I didn't explain it well. What I am saying.
Well, he just got here. He may have missed part of it.
Gotcha. But
I'm going to post his comment in the chat if you'd like to look it over again.
Yeah. For any discrete system of logic, okay, there will exist at least one boundary proposition that is neither provable nor disprovable in the system. Right? That's the first incompleteness theorem of Gödel's incompleteness theorem. So if that discrete system within the Bible did make falsifiable non-predictions from outside the knowledge range of this earth, would it be true? Again, that it doesn't matter what the axioms are. Okay, there will always exist because of the discreteness of the language. We're not talking. So this is the potential problem: is I have to use a language to refer to metaphysical things, right? And we don't. Here's another question: the reference towards a thing isn't even demonstrative of its necessary existence. For all we know, it may not fundamentally exist, but only exist in lieu of the referential language. So it's compounded. There's so many angles to this. But what I'm trying to tell you is that as soon as something is structured discretely, okay, in a system of language, it is impossible for you to claim certainty with that system as long as it's discrete. And that's because there will always exist at least one boundary proposition because of that. The way that it works, I mean, I really wish I'd have a screen share. Maybe we could plan that later.
We could. If you don't mind, people don't realize, or some people know, that we're using StreamYards on one side, OBS on the other, and I just haven't gotten to the screen share part yet. My apologies.
Because if I go into the logic, I suspect that most people won't follow it unless I use a visual aid. That's usually been the case. I think there's a reason it's taught on whiteboards, because otherwise there's a lot of real estate in your head that you have to use just to hold it in your mind. And that kind of might detract from being able to follow what's being explained.
Right.
So I don't know at this point if I should explain it or if I shouldn't. I'd be happy to do either.
Can you try a quick run through as best you can? I know the topics are too, it's hard. And then you're using words that people don't understand to explain things. What's an axiom?
All right. So
how many people in the chat know what an axiom is? Show of hands, right? So if you use words that people don't understand to explain concepts they don't understand, that's what that language you're talking about. I totally get it, brother. I get it.
So let's imagine, like, chat, look at the messages that you're typing, right? You can take every symbol and you can count those. It's a countable set. Okay. Every word that you have uttered, right? If we go down to the Planck second, we can still partition into a countable set of audible variations. Not because sound itself is necessarily discontinuous, we don't know, but because the musculoskeletal composition is countable, because it's composed of discrete particles, we think, beyond reasonable doubt. But even so, if it's a discrete system, okay, take the x sub nth system, and we're letting x sub n just be a symbol to represent any arbitrary symbol. You know, maybe it's a circle, maybe it's my hand, maybe it's your glass, whatever it is. Take the nth such symbol. We'll call it x sub n. And in code, that is associate this with a positive integer n. So for example, if I was using the English language, right, let's take A to be encoded as the number 1, B to be encoded as the number 2. Okay. Now, we can take these symbols individually and concatenate them, put them together to form strings that, depending on our syntax, have a defined meaning. And in some instances, a defined truth value, a propositional truth value, right? So in our case, in English, we formulate sentences under certain syntactical adherences, right? And the syntax can be arbitrary, it doesn't matter. But whatever you define the syntax, some strings of symbols now form a propositional truth claim, right? But whatever they are, take a string, and each placement in the string, we generalize to the ith such placement. Now we have to take a quick detour for a minute. For any positive integer x, by the fundamental theorem of arithmetic, which technically is fundamentally conjecture at the deepest level, but it's, there is a unique prime factorization, right? P1 to the n1 times P2 to the n2, right? So 6 is 2 to the first times 3 to the first, all the other primes to the 0th power, right? Let the ith entry in the string be encoded, so the ith place be encoded as the ith prime number, and let what is in that ith entry in the string be represented by the positive integer n that encodes that thing. So for example, the number 6 is 2 to the first times 3 to the first, right? 2 is the first prime number. So when we look at the number 2 in the unique prime factorization, that tells us, okay, the ith, that is the first prime 2, the first entry in the string, is up to the power of what? It's 1, okay? What does 1 encode? A. So the first entry in the string is A. Now 3 to the first, the second prime number, well, since it's to the first power, right? That tells us that the second term, it's also encoded to a 1, is A. So the number 6 now encodes the string AA. Okay, and this is what computers do. They encode different languages into numbers. So now we can use numbers so take the set of all possible numbers, and this now represents the set of all possible sentences, arguments, axioms you could make with this language. Okay, and now what you do is you make a table. Take all of your axioms, everything you could possibly write, every theorem resulting from those axioms, and put it on a table. And then you do something called diagonalization. You move at the top, the tippy top corner, okay, and you work diagonally. And if this first digit is even, you make it odd. If it's odd, you make it even. You do the same thing here. If it's even, make it odd. If it's odd, make it even. Do the same thing here. You then take those, line them up, and put them at the bottom. That number will not be on the list. Okay? And the problem is, if you define the table to be the set of all possible sentences resultant from your axioms, you now have something not derivable from the axioms. And you can prove that the result will, in some instances, be a well-defined truth value okay, that will be neither provable nor disprovable from the system. Now, you can define a larger system to then account for that, but then you can repeat the process. But it needs to be understood that in this explanation, this is an analogy. The actual proofs for Gödel's incompleteness theorems are very rigorous, are not, shall we say, for the faint of heart. Even for people who are very familiar with logic, you have to be very, very well versed in logic to deeply understand them. So it needs to be understood that what I've explained to you is an analogy. It is not the actual proof, but the intuition is preserved. That is what's going on, that you can always find. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to say out real quick, John Anthony, shut your whore mouth. You just shut your whore mouth. Carry on. Chris, carry on. I'm with you 100%, brother. I got you.
But that's so in response to the question of like, insofar as the discreteness of the Bible, I hope that clarifies. It's not about, we could just find the right proposition, right? The proposition that is of the supernatural. It doesn't matter what the meaning is. It is a structure.
Right.
It doesn't matter the meaning of the proposition. That's the thing. That's right. The logic in this case is about a structure.
So the question is wrong.
It's just, if it were the case, we couldn't say.
Gotcha.
You know?
Yes, they were picking on me about how I'm nodding like I understand what you're talking about. I'm trying to run the show, to be honest. even with normal Muggle guests, and they're talking, my cat plays with a ball of string over there. I'm over running the show, and I'm like, string? Who's strong? Because I'm not paying attention. So I'm really trying to keep up with you. But
I think I can relate, because that's what I got to do on our channel. While I'm talking to them on our channel, I'm running the show too. So I think I got you.
Yeah.
Tricky.
So he was teasing me about how he's saying I didn't really know what you were talking about. I just wanted to call him out on that. So thank you, Gary Priestley. We've had other people show up, man. We got a lot of folk going on. You're quite the draw.
Maybe.
Yeah, I know. Maybe. See, you could potentially be quite the draw if you indeed are actually real. I'm not sure yet. I think I'm not sure. I conjecture that I may not be sure.
You're getting better.
I'm getting better.
Maybe.
Look at me. I use pull-ups now. Now they're just picking on me in the chat. Neil says he gets it, but Neil works in a lab and he's a smart person. I am not a smart person. So I just play the cello and the piano and French, Spanish and Italian.
It needs to also be understood that this isn't necessarily a statement about logic itself, metaphysically. It could just be It could just be a theorem about the constraints of discrete languages in reference to logic. In other words, that's why my dissertation will be trying to explore continuous systems, which don't use discrete symbols.
Wes from the chat wanted to ask you to define theorem. Or was it?
Right.
Yeah.
In mathematics, what we mean by a theorem is something for which there is a proof. But now you see the concern is, most mathematicians may not like to admit this, but if you go deep enough, there's room for suspicion. So I'd say a theorem is something that we have shown beyond what we affirm to be reasonable doubt to be true, to a level of rigor that right now kind of pushes the boundary of the constraints of discrete systems. I would say that's because, as I think the question may imply for an avid person posing the question, or an astute, is it's not clear how a theorem is any more substantive than what would appear an incoherent argument, because then for us to say that argument is not valid, we are falling back on an assumed structure that we haven't fundamentally proven.
I never do that. I try. Man, I gotta say, I've really, despite my catty nature, if you will, I've really enjoyed talking to you. You're a lot of fun. I'm gonna have to take like a Advil before the show next time you come on, because you really work the brain. You make my brain work. I have to say, listening to you and marijuana are not conducive to each other. It's hard to keep up with.
But I think I like the questions, though. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's questions, really smart questions coming from the chat, and I'm like, wow, you guys, I'm all proud of my people out there. Way to go. Yeah. So I think what I'm going to do, I've abused you long enough, hour and a half. Thank you, Christopher, for coming on the show. I never even asked you if you prefer Chris or Christopher. I just assumed. I saw your deal on the show. the other day, and I chose Christopher. I also thought it'd be easier for us to remember, and I started to have Chris the Atheist Pastor on my show just to confuse the hell out of everybody. We're going to call him Topher. I'll be Chris, and you could be Christopher. That works for me. Let me see. Does John Anthony? Okay, all right, everybody else, I think we're all set. I'm going to say bye to all my wonderful people in the chat. Neil, Wes, you know Wes. Neil, again, I never saw if you answered, Neil. I never saw. Do you do people who are cradle atheists? Do you have them on your show? If you do, let me know. You'd probably love to have this guy on your show. He's a lot of fun. Yeah, I didn't believe it whenever Wes and Duncan said he was a lot of fun. I was like, and yeah. So thank you for Chris. Thank you for being on the show. And thank you for being such a easygoing guest. I know I kind of ribbed you hard there for a few minutes. You did great. You didn't tell me to fuck off or anything.
I think I enjoyed it as well.
You think? Yeah. See, that brings in the question. You're not real sure, but Richard Madsen. Richard Madsen's a lot of fun. Lots of people talking in the chat. Just saying bye to everybody. You guys are wonderful. Thank you very much. Christopher Topher. That's right. Best name ever. Thank you. Again, Chris, you know what? I wouldn't be against having you on my show. Do you do sci-fi?
I think that my sci-fi wouldn't be most people's sci-fi, if that makes sense. Meaning, like, for me, it's like what we do is like in theoretical physics is we postulate systems of equations that imply things about the universe. But if there's no substantive evidence, we call them conjectures, right? So our conjectures, I don't know. I could, but I feel like it wouldn't be like, I think people would show up on the show expecting one thing and getting another. Yes. They'd be like, oh, we're going to talk about, warp drive or something. It was like, what the hell? What do you mean a Schwarzschild radius? Like,
Right. They're expecting fun.
Right. And it
may not be fun. It might be less than fun. If fun were over here, it'd be like less than.
Depends on the person,
fun.
Right?
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, anyway, one of these days, I'd love to have you again on the show. It would be a lot of fun. Or, of course, I'll come on y'all's show again. Have I been on your show?
Not directly, but implicitly.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah. See? All right, guys. Thank you all for showing up. Thank you again, Chris. Thank you to all my peeps in the chat. I will see you tomorrow.